Chris Lee, Blake Lovell, and Blayne Gilmer, Southeastern 14 here to do our college football playoff picks preseason. Gentlemen, this was not easy. Some of you had an easier time than others. And by that, I mean you two had a much easier time than I did. Blayne, let's get it started off with you, your picks for the college football playoff.
All right. So without going into having to do too much analysis, Georgia's going to get back there. They are just too deep, and that schedule's too conducive. They got too many playmakers to get derailed. I like Georgia to win the SEC once again and to make their way to the college football playoff. And then I think they will face LSU, as I've predicted, in that SEC championship game. But I think that loss to Georgia will be LSU's first loss to the season. I think they're going to be undefeated going into that game, because I was talking to Blake, earlier before we recorded, and the more I look at LSU, just the more I like that roster, the more I like. People are talking about Jaden Daniels being scared to take shots down the field, all this kind of stuff. This is just total malarkey. He's going to be great going from year one to year two there for Mike Denbrock in that system. So I really like them, but I think they'll be the 3 seed after that loss. So Georgia 1, LSU 3, put them on different sides of the bracket. I think Michigan is going to be the number 2 team. I think they're going to just run through the Big Ten. I mean, there are some landmines there. Of course, Ohio State's good, but I think Ohio State, who knows what they're going to have at quarterback this year. Penn State's got a very good team, but I think Michigan, they could win the Joe Moore Award for the 3rd year in a row. They get great offensive line, great running back play. They're going to be very physical. This could be Harbaugh's last year there because he's going to try to skirt out of there and get to the NFL before the NCAA lays the hammer down on him. And then the 4th team, I'm going to go out west, and I'm going to say this is a sob story, feel good, just conspiracy to get a Pac-12 team into the college football playoff. And the Washington Huskies are going to, led by Michael Penix Jr., are going to just eviscerate everybody over there through the air. That guy's going to be in New York as a Heisman Trophy finalist. And I think when you look at their schedule, they get Oregon at home. They get Utah at home. They do have to go on the road to USC, but that's in a tough stretch for USC. And then they have to go on the road to an Oregon State team. I do think they lose 1 game, but I think they're a 1-loss Pac-12 champion, and I think they get in as the 4 seed. So those are my 2023-2024 college football playoff predictions.
Blake.
Oh, so you want to go last, Chris? Okay.
Of course I want to go last.
You're still deciding on your
still debating.
team, probably. Yeah. Well, all right. There's no debate for me on my top 3 at least, and not going to be any difference than what Blayne just said. I think George, as he's mentioned, to quote a great philosopher, to be the man, you got to beat the man, and nobody's beaten Georgia the past couple seasons, and so I need to see that before I'm going to predict it not to happen. Or for them not to get to the college football playoffs. So give me Georgia at the 1 spot 2 again. I'm also going to put LSU on the opposite side at 3. I don't know if I'm going to pick LSU to go undefeated leading into that SEC championship game. They could lose one along the way and still have a shot. But, I mean, as Blayne said, LSU, just the more you look at them, it's hard not to be impressed with what you see. And I just think that there's, again, a really good opportunity for them to carve a path here to this college football playoff. I kind of mentioned before, I think probably when we did the schedule preview, that early part of the schedule, and of course you got the game in Alabama later in the season, there are some potential pitfalls in there, as we know, like a Florida State, even a sneaky game like at a Mississippi State or Missouri and Ole Miss. I mean, those are road games, right? And so, so I think the Florida State one's in Orlando, but it's just one of those things that you kind of look at and makes you, if they can just get past that early, right? Because then they got 5 of their last 6 in Baton Rouge. So, yeah, I'm going to LSU too. I think both those teams from the SEC get there. And then I'm also going to go Michigan. I think when you look at Michigan's schedule, everybody wants to talk about Georgia's schedule. I mean, Michigan's schedule. There is absolutely no reason whatsoever that Michigan should not be 9-0 heading into that game against Penn State on November 11th. Now, that is in Happy Valley there, and that's going to be a tough one, but they do get Ohio State at home to finish the season. I think This Michigan team is loaded. And so they would be my pick out of the Big Ten just based on that. And then, so I had a debate here. And Blayne brought up USC a minute ago and kind of a tough stretch for USC. And that's why ultimately I decided on not going with the Trojans in the 4th spot, because they do have a stretch from October the 14th to November the 11th. That includes at Notre Dame, home against Utah, home against Washington, at Oregon. Those are 4 top 15 teams. And so I just have a hard time finding a path for USC to get out of that unscathed, maybe even with 2. And so I think the Washington pick is very intriguing because of that. If you just compare schedules, it's just having the at Notre Dame on there, right? And I mean, that's a team that, you know, maybe not every other team in that league is going to have on there. And so just having that as part of your schedule and it's on the road, that's tough in the middle of that really difficult stretch there. So I went against USC, and I ultimately opted, guys, to go with 3 SEC teams. But it's just going to be 3 SEC teams as of 2024, not 23, because I'm going with Texas as for a preview of next season, because as we know, Georgia and Texas are going to play next season. And so I will go Georgia 1, Texas 4. The Big 12 is an interesting one because, look, I think it's a situation where I'm not saying Texas is going to run the table, because I would, probably pick them to lose at Alabama in week 2. But everywhere else, there's opportunity. And when I look at the rest of the schedule, yes, there are games like, they get Kansas State at home. That's a good thing. They get Oklahoma, of course, and Dallas. They got to go to TCU. That's an interesting one. But I look everywhere else, and I'm just like, I see opportunity. I see the path for Texas to get there. And so I will go 3 future members of the SEC, 2 current members of the SEC in this year's college football playoff. Georgia 1, Texas 4, Michigan 2, LSU 3.
All right, gentlemen, I have changed my mind more times than I can count. Okay, Georgia, safe pick, I think, and a lot of it's the schedule. You kind of can't go against Georgia based on recent history, and again, a slate that a lot of people think is favorable. So that was the easy one. Michigan, Blake, I think for reasons you named too, pretty easy pick. I'm going to contradict myself a little bit because I've got LSU winning the West. But the last time Alabama under Nick Saban didn't make the playoff twice in a row was when? Never?
I don't know. It seems like it's been, well, it's the last 2 years, right?
Well, I mean, I don't know. I just have a sneaky feeling he seemed a very happy man in the offseason. Yeah. Okay, we have got on the table Southern Cal. Blayne, you talked me out of that one. Penn State is one I'm batting around, but I think there's a road trip to Michigan in there. I don't know how many losses the Big Ten can get. Kansas State's one I batted around. Is Kansas State talented enough? I don't know. I'm going to give you one, and I picked them to lose week 1. And they're going to either have to prove me wrong there, or they're going to have to go to Clemson and win. But I'm going to go Florida State as my 4. Like the quarterback play, like the defense. I think they've got so many of the ingredients. I don't know if the schedule's going to permit it, but there you go. I've changed my mind on 3 and 4 many times, but I'm going to go with those 4.
So it was Georgia, Florida State, Michigan, and who was your?
Bama.
Alabama at 3. All right. So now that we've picked our 4, guys, I've got them here in a banner. We've got to say how this is going to play out. All right, so I'll start with mine. I've got Georgia versus Washington, the 1 versus the 4, Michigan versus LSU. I'm going to say that it ends up being a SEC championship rematch, Georgia versus LSU in the national championship game, and Georgia gets the trifecta. They will have beaten LSU 3 times in the last 2 years after this. Georgia three-peats national champions once again, with Kirby Smart now cementing himself as one of the greatest of all time, if not getting right up there on par with Saban Lovell. So that is my prediction for the 2023-2024 college football season. Blake, you're up, man.
Chris, I need you to find a stat for me. We don't need it for this, but how many times the SEC played each other in the national championship? How many times did that happen?
Been a few.
I'm trying to think off the top of my head, but
no, Bama and LSU did it in the BCS.
Yeah.
Bama and Georgia did it in 2017 or 2018 national championship game, and then also when Georgia won it in 2021.
Yeah. So I was trying to think of how many times that had happened. I think there's a very good chance that happens again. And I'm going to go Georgia to beat Texas. I'm also going to go LSU, I think, to beat Michigan, and then I'm going to go Georgia for the three-peat. Like I said, I can't predict against it until I see it, and that's just like how I seemingly always make my picks. Like I know how hard it is to do, but I've seen them do it back-to-back seasons, and now everybody's like, well, they can't win back. Sure, they could. Now it's like, well, they can't win 3. Well, I think they probably can, and like you mentioned, I think the schedules, and we can talk about, everybody can say schedule this, schedule that, but in essence, it just gives them an opportunity to, maybe not be as beat up as a lot of these other teams that they're, that are going to get to the same spot. And so, I'll go Georgia over LSU too.
And okay, Chris, here's your final 4.
There we go. Give me an Alabama-Georgia rematch. How about that?
Well, we are some homers here.
We are.
Hey, it is speaking the truth. Okay. And, I'm told every Sunday, speak the truth in love, right? And that is exactly what we're doing here. We're just letting all the good fans of college football out there aware that the SEC is better than everybody else. And they prove it every year, not only on the field, but the NFL draft, in recruiting. It's just a fact of life. Okay. And, there's the birds and the bees, there's arithmetic, and then there's SEC football. There's just facts that are out there that you have to live with, and that's it.
It's just turned into a wrestling promo here. But it's a good one. I'd give it a high grade.
I like how you guys have found confidence, because I have none in this. I really don't. And this is one of the cool things. Look, there's a lot of things about the current era of college football I don't like. But what I do like is I think it has brought us some parity, guys. I mean, you got 3 teams at the top of the SEC that you could argue is number 1 overall. You've got Texas A&M sitting out there. God knows what they're going to do this year. You've got, several teams in the Pac-12 you could argue for. Washington, Southern Cal, the Big 12. I mean, Blake, you had Texas in there. I was thinking Kansas State. Some people are saying Oklahoma. I think if Florida State can survive week 1, I mean, it might get there anyway, although it's going to have to win at Clemson. I just think you've got a fascinating era of college football right now. I mean, people can have fun with our picks. I'll tell you, I have no confidence in mine. I really don't.
Yeah, say it with your chest. You say it with conviction, and
right.
That's where it comes from.
I still think you should have went Kansas
but I
State,
don't.
Chris. You should have went Kansas State.
I probably should have
of this group. I'm going Kansas State as the sleeper team.
There's just something about me that just thinks I don't know how much. Ultimately, it is about talent.
One disclaimer. If Tulane beats Ole Miss, Tulane will be in the college football playoff, because nobody else is going to beat them. I'm telling you, they're a good football team. And if they get past Ole Miss, with Ole Miss going now, I think Quinshon Judkins and them are going to take care of them. But if they beat Ole Miss, Willie Fritz and company, watch out. They could be the Cincinnati of 2023, 2024 in college football.
Well, and here's the next place to go with what I was saying. I just think this parity at the top is going to be fun as we see how things sort out. I think the 12-team playoff, everybody's always kind of said, well, the old system where they had the top 2 teams gave you the right champion, and people are saying this one's going to give you the right champion with the 4 teams that we've got now. I think as you are seeing more parity in the game, I think the 12-team playoff is going to be a lot more interesting than it would have been 10, even 5 years ago. And I'm just having this discussion makes me think forward to that and very much look forward to that.
One more reminder, Chris. Remember what I said to you guys, and Blayne's brought it up in a previous video in the group chat on the text. When LSU got into a brouhaha on day 1 of practice, I said, this is the path to success, is when you start fighting each other, you're ready to roll this season. So that's why we're high on LSU, because they they went after each other. And so that's what I wanted to see from my college football playoff picks for the SEC. So.
Yeah, when a Brian Kelly coach team literally starts fighting, watch out, okay? Because that was not on the docket if you go back to the Notre Dame years. And now he's got I think he's got a little bit different specimen to work with down in the Bayou, and he is loving life. And I think we all are predicting if Georgia wasn't around, if Georgia wasn't like, in the 1920s Yankees mode right now and just mauling people, then LSU would have a chance to really burst onto the scene here.
I like how we brought the 1920s Yankees into this, Blake.
You got to you got to bring in all the people. You know what I'm saying? Everybody from every different walk of life.
All right. Any parting thoughts, gentlemen?
Hey, we have 10,000 plus subscribers on YouTube now. Hit that subscribe button. If you're a Texas fan that found your way here, you're welcome. And yeah, hit that subscribe button. A lot of fun stuff on the way this season. And give us your college football playoff predictions in the comments. Let us know who you picking, who's your top four, who's winning it all. We always love the feedback.
All right, guys, I'm gonna ask you one thing. Odds that a team that none of us mention makes the playoffs. Would you take the yes or the no on that?
Makes the playoffs? There's always going to be one team that nobody sees coming that makes the playoffs every single year. But I think the benefit of it being played out on the field, as you suggested, even with the 12-team playoff, I think most of the time you're going to get those dominant 3 or 4 teams, in the country that absolutely take care of business on the field. So, yeah, make the playoff, maybe, like a TCU from last year. But, we saw Georgia hang 60+ on them in the national championship game. So whether they can make it to the end, but yeah, somebody's gonna come from nowhere and make the playoff.
So you're taking the yes, that there'll be a team that we did not name that makes the playoffs. Blake?
Yeah, because I think that's where you could find a Clemson, I don't know, Utah or
Tennessee goes crazy.
A&M. Look, who knows, right? So I think I would go yes. I think that's probably a good possibility.
I'm glad you mentioned Utah. That was one that was kind of on my radar, but their quarterback situation with the health there, is we're doing this in, mid-August. I've heard some people be a little nervous about that, and so I think I kind of use that as a reason not to there.
Cam Rising, he'll end up playing. It'll be fine.
Yeah. All right. Hope you enjoyed our video. Again, leave your picks in the comments. Tell us where we're wrong, where we're right. For Blake Lovell and Blayne Gilmer, I'm Chris Lee of Southeastern 14. Thanks for watching. We'll see you again soon with more SEC football content.